What's up guys, Anders here with another labs update video for you guys. Before we get started, I do want to say if you enjoyed this video, please like and sub to the channel if you haven't already. Every sub counts as we continue to grow. If you want to go the extra mile and support the channel, you can click on the join button below the video or on my main channel page to offer a small monetary contribution to help keep the channel going. Now every membership is going to give you a small perk and a personal thank you before every video I make. Now on to the test server patch notes. A lot to get through. A lot of important stuff about PvP balance changes. A lot of uproar over this patch notes, and before we get started, I do want to say that we don't know the full picture yet. They mentioned that there is a baseline modifier for each class now that has changed, so we don't exactly know what that is because they haven't told us. So when you see the numbers, for example, we're going to be looking at Meteor first, with blooming having less damage. The modifiers on the tooltip have not changed. That means that we see a PvP damage reduction, but they've changed the modifiers of every class to be in line with what that class's role is and to be in line with the weakest skill of that class. So we don't know what that means because first it's a bad translation because this is all in Korean into English, so sometimes things don't get translated very well, and it could be a sort of a split damage situation where we see the word split damage being removed. We think that's a very good thing. All skills no longer have split damage, when maybe 3-4 weeks later they say, oh, these are the specific skills that no longer have split damage, and we realize actually nothing really that changed much. These changes, they're not final. They even said that they're going to take longer to test these changes, and they'll be looking at Korean feedback. Unfortunately, if you don't know Korean, they're probably not going to read your feedback. So let's get started with Meteor. So the following skills PvP damage has been reduced by 5%. All these kicks and stuff have been reduced by 5%. It's not too bad. The following skills PvP damage has been reduced by 7%. So that's on the awakening skills, tip of an iceberg, all the flows, New Year's Eve, absolute decapitation as well. The following skills PvP damage has been reduced by 9% on the Chaos Crimson Gust and Blooming Stride and Blooming Step. And the absolute Red Moon's PvP damage has been increased by about 15%, so Red Moon has a bit of a buff there. Red Moon's PvP damage in Succession has also increased by 9% at all levels, so that's really nice. Moonrise and Frost Pillar both have increased damage as well by 7 and 3% respectively. In terms of Succession, the big nerfs are Decapitation is now reduced by 28% at all levels. Dragon Bite is reduced by 1%. Carver now is, I believe, 4% less. And the big one is Blooming PvP damage has been reduced by 48% at all levels. And Sticky Snowflake PvP damage has been reduced by 44% at all levels. So again, a pretty huge nerf for the SS. Let's look at Ninja, another class I was hit pretty hard if everything stays the same. So Awakening PvP damage reduced by 25%. Drastic Measure was reduced by 40%. And Serpent's Ascension was reduced by 19%. So off the bat, some pretty drastic changes there. Foxclaw PvP damage 26% reduction. Shadow Stomp 34%, Hard Aiming 53%, Moonlight PvP damage 17%, Beheading 22% reduction, Blade Spin 12%, Illusion of Restraint 18%, and all the Shuriken throws, Suicide Fall, Ankle Cutter, Crescent Slash 22% on all those skills that you see on the list here. PvP damage reduction by 31% on the Succession skills as well. So Moonlight Malice, Shuriken Flight, Evasive Malice, Shadow Slash, all 31% reduction. Beheading and Foxclaw Succession skills also got reduced by 19 and 34%. So pretty hefty nerfs for the Ninja. The Kuno, pretty much the same story, to be honest. Kunai Throw, Floor Sweep, Suicide Fall, 22% damage reduction. Sinew Cut and Assassin's Trail, this is the Robomb, 18% reduction. 19% reduction on the Awakening skills. So Chakram Rise, Indignation, Half Moon Slash, Delighted Blast, all that stuff. 19% less damage. Dance Macabre, 11%, as well as Sonin Saspree is 11% reduction. Lethal Spin Spree, 23%, and Wheel of Wrath is 35% reduction of PvP damage. Foxclaw, Shadow Explosion, Flash Slash, Shadow Stomp, Hard Aiming, Shackles all have reduced, like 26, 23, 27, 34. Hard Aiming 53%, it just does a lot of damage in general, so that's why they have a hefty reduction. Successions is Shackles, Shadow Clone, Tendon Cutter, Foxclaw, Shadow Explosion, all those 13, 10, 12. Fatal Blow 1%, not really a big loss. But again, we don't really know if this means raw damage reduction because test server works a bit differently. So people are doing about the same damage. In some cases like Ranger, where I felt like the damage was pretty similar, to be honest. It wasn't, a huge difference, at least that 269 Kuno, which is what I usually test classes at. But for Ranger, the following skills now have reduced damage in PvP by 33%. So all her awakening abilities, her pre-awakened abilities as well, Charging Wind, Extreme Charging Wind, Razor Wind, basically everything. And the Succession is 32% less damage as well in PvP. It is what it is, but it didn't seem that drastic. But again, problem with test server is that it's not real world scenario because everyone's HP is so low and no one's really using Kafras. It's hard to get Kafras in the server, so you don't use Kafras armor that often, so you're losing a lot of evasion and HP that you inherently get through that as well. Now as for Berserker, probably one of the few classes to not get nerfs, basically just straight PvP damage buffs. So Giant Leap, Titan Blow, Flame Buster, all the absolutes that you can see here, 26% increase in PvP damage. The following skills have increased PvP damage by 16%, so Feral Rage and Wailing Beast, and 16% on the Succession skills, Raging Thunder, Fearsome Tyrant, Ancient Wave, Frenzy Destroyer, and Devastation also got increases by 9 and 2. So Slugfest PvP damage increased by 28%, Blasting, 30% PvP damage increase, it's insane. Feral Stampede, 7%, Acts of Destruction, 32%, Devastation, 19%, and Ground Lifting, 13%. So straight buffs for Berserker, not bad. So Archer, pretty hefty ones, I have to say. This entire long list: Meteor Dive, Gaping Darkness, Shadow Hack, Arrow Explosion, Purging Shot, Winged Strike, Radiant Explosion, Spear of Sylvia, Lutheran's Call. Basically 22% damage reduction on all those skills, a 10% reduction on the Ascending Spirit, and the big one a lot of people are talking about is Full Bloom, 44% PvP damage reduction, which is insane. So yeah, if this goes through like the way it is right now, Archer is going to struggle a little bit, I think, against high DP, high evasion targets. It's going to be hard to kill people, I think, but we'll see. We don't know anything yet. Lon not hit as hard. Increases in damage, actually, because they've been hit hard already with the Succession changes and all that. So the absolute skills, all of those, and Tailspin and some other awakening skills all increased by 3%. So a bit of a damage increase there. And about 4.5% on the Rabam skills, more damage there as well. The Succession skills now have increased damage as well, 6% from the initial nerfs that they received maybe a few weeks ago now. And the Cymbidium, Salpuri, Blooming Nether Flower, and Blade Dance all have damage increases by 1, 23%, 21, and 4. So not bad for Lon. They received some damage increases, which is good. Not so good, though, is Dark Knights. They've received nerfs to their damage in PvP by about 17%. Although, again, some people are anecdotally saying that they feel like they do more damage. Again, it's very difficult to know in test server with just how the characters are crafted. It's hard to say really how much damage you are increasing unless you have footage from you testing previously. So 17% PvP damage reduction on all these absolute skills, as well as some of the awakening skills, and a 15% damage reduction on all her Succession skills, as well as some more absolute skills like Wheel of Fortune, Lunacy of the Vidir, and Shadow Strike PvP damage decreased by 27%. Basically all reductions on Pervasive Darkness PvP, 20% as well. Enforcement, 28% on Succession as well. So some hefty nerfs if it goes through like this. Now Warrior, I believe they got buffs on their awakening, yet damage in PvP increased by about 12% on the following awakening skills. So Solar Flare, Frenzied Strike, Merciless, Balance Strike, Grave Digging, Pulverize, Armor Break, Knee Kick, Hilt Strike, Overwhelm, Reckless Blow, and Ankle Break all receive PvP buffs, and also damage increases in these absolute pre-awakened skills by 12%. Heavy Strike, Piercing Spear, Counter, Spinning Slash, Ground Slash, all these now have 12% more damage. Reduction of damage in Succession, so 12% on these Ground Slash, Heavy Strike, Shield Strike, Forward Slash, so on and so forth. Spinning Slash damage has been reduced by 26% in Succession, as well as Scars of Dusk is another 10%. So they've nerfed, I think, Scars of Dusk twice now already. So another 10% reduction on that skill in Succession. So overall, you can look at Awakening Warrior being buffed and Succession Warrior being nerfed if all this goes through. Now Valkyrie a little bit better than the previous changes that we saw. So Flow Blitz Stab is now a new skill that can be used after Blitz Stab. It's a second Blitz Stab after Blitz Stab, so you can do a second one basically. And instead of a knockback, it's a knockdown CC, so really nice. And Blitz Stab can now be activated from the Sword and Shield mode with WRMB. Shield Chase 1, 2, and 3 and their movement distance has been unified to all to match Shield Chase 3's movement distance. So If you don't have rank 3, you still move the same distance. Shield Chase 1, 2, and 3 have added super armor next to their frontal guard. That's very good. Cooldown of Verdict Lancia, whatever that word is, has been reduced from 27 to 21 seconds on the last rank. Wave of Light now applies a minus 15 DP debuff. That's very good. Deathline Chase backwards will now keep you in Awakening. The Stab AoE of Terra Sancta has been unified to be the AoE of the wave hit. And Promptness now is half damage but double the hit amount. And Promptness off cooldown is now 100% critical hit rate. These are something that will go through to live servers no matter what. They did specify that. The other damage changes will be in test servers for a while, but these changes for Valkyrie specifically, these mechanic changes will be going live soon. So if you're a Valkyrie, you should be pretty happy about that. Now Sorceress, again, very similar to the Awakening Warrior, where they have Awakening Sorceress getting buffs by about 12%, 3%, 58% in some skills. Black Wave 33% on the absolute Black Wave. Darkness Release 2%. Dream of Doom PvP damage has been reduced by 2%. And those are reductions. Very slight, 2% is nothing. But Succession specifically targeted. So they have about 25% less damage on Crow Flare, Midnight Stinger, Russian Crow, and all Succession skills. And Black Wave, Bloody Calamity, 23% and 13% respectively. Violation PvP damage reduced by 7% in Succession. Dream of Doom PvP damage reduced by 40% in Succession. And Crowflow will no longer recover stamina on use, which is another big thing as well in Succession. They also changed the bombs, I believe. Engulfing Shadow is now more damage, 12%. Crow Nightmare is 4% as well. The Shadow Ignition is 25% less damage. And Abyssal Blow PvP damage is now 25% less damage as well. So overall, the bombs got a little bit of a nerf. The Awakening overall buffs and the Succession heavy nerfs. But I played against some Sorceress Successions and the damage felt the same to me. But again, test server is kind of funky. Tamer kind of got away with everything okay, nothing too crazy. I believe their damage in Awakening was slightly increased by 4%. So Garuda, Beast Rampage, All Around Spinner, and their Absolute, Bolt and Jolt also got 4% increases in PvP damage. The decreases were in their bombs by 6% and their Succession by 15% on the Succession Bolt Jolt, Roaring, Upward Claw, Void, Lightning, Trample, Surging Tide, Throat Burn, Lightning of Earth, Moonlight Strike, and All-Round Spinner, all 15% less damage, as well as the Absolute Jolt Wave PvP damage was reduced by 3%, and the Succession Whiplash damage was reduced by 3% as well. But overall, I'd say not hit as hard as other classes. Witch and Wizard, a lot of changes to go through. So in terms of just absolute PvP damage skills, 9.5% reduction. All these major skills, Meteor, Fireball, Fireball Explosion. If you're Awakening, you're going to be using these, of course. If you're in Succession, it's about a 30% reduction of damage in Succession Fireball, Fireball Explosion, Succession Blizzard, Frigid Fog, Residual Lightning, Multiple Magic Arrows, and Earth Arrow. So Wizard Succession damage decreased by 30%. It's pretty crazy. Witch Awakening PvP damage decreased by 11% on her Awakening skills, as well as her Rabam skills, 19% reduction on her Rabam skills as well. So the Wizard Awakening was reduced by 8% on his Awakening skills and 20% on his Rabam skills. And Succession Fireball PvP damage, Freeze, Meteor, all receiving major reductions of damage, 21, 24, 16, 23%, 22% on Lightning Storm, 13% on Lightning, 33% on Earthquake, 37% on Equilibrium PvP damage, 44% on Bolide, 44% on Voltaic Pulse as well, and 44% on Aqua Gel. All major changes to their damage. I did notice that Wizard Succession was doing way less damage on test server. Now Asgardian, basically almost all her skills, 9% damage reduction. That's pretty much the entire story there. 9% damage reduction. I tried Guardian Succession. She still does so much damage, so I can only assume Awakening does just as much or more. So yeah, 9% damage reduction on Guardians. Musa received, again, damage reductions on pretty much all his absolutes. Steel Gale, Pouncing Dragon, Quick Shot, 7% damage reduction. All his Succession damage was reduced by 9%. On almost every skill. Absolute Rising Storm was 29% damage reduction. Succession Gale was 22% damage reduction. Blind Thrust, Blooming, and Dragon Bite all received reductions. Blooming PvP damage on Absolute is 43% reduction. Blooming Succession damage is 45% reduction. And Crust Crusher PvP damage has been reduced by about 3% at all levels. Just pretty much straight nerfs for the Musa. Now Striker, They've had slight increases and slight decreases. Same thing for Mystic. These classes were not really touched very much. In terms of PvP damage increases by about 2%, you have mostly all their pre-awakened or their awakening and their absolute skills all receiving about 2% increase in damage. Their damage was reduced in succession about 10%. Overall, Wolfsang PvP damage has been reduced by about 2% on absolute. Twisted Collision absolute was also increased by about 25%. And in terms of succession, Knee Hammer 19%, 25% less damage on Rampaging Predator. Skull Crusher, his PvP damage has been increased by 6%. It's very, very slight changes. Again, with Mystic, same thing. 3% increased damage on Awakening and some absolute skills, and about 5% reduction of damage in succession. And that's pretty much it for the major changes that we have for PvP on the test server. Again, guys, it's on test server, so we won't know until they either are more open about what they mean about balance modifiers, with the classes being different now per class, or they go live in Korea and we can actually test things on live servers with real people and real gear. And that's all I got for you guys. Let me know what you thought about these changes, and if your class has been impacted. If you've gone on test server, let me know what you thought about your changes in the comments down below. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.